Hi everyone, welcome to Simply Seasonal. Megan and Kara here, and we are diving deeper into the conversation from our cooking show, which airs earlier in the week on simplyseasonal.com. And here you're going to learn the simple ways to use seasonal foods to help you balance, heal, and thrive. So jump in at any time because what we're talking about is always relevant to the time. And so right now, there's a lot going on. Not only is it this huge shift in our seasons from winter to spring, so we're now in the springtime mode, which we're going to talk about today, but also we are in the midst of a huge pandemic of a virus. So we're really going to get into that today and what type of steps you can take to help boost your immune system so that you have the best chance of potentially not contracting, or even if you do come down with it, to have the best chance of really having your body adapt and thrive and come through stronger on the other side.
Yeah. So Megan, I really want to share our tips on how to give yourself the best chance of not contracting this virus. And if you do, making it really quick and really easy to get through. Now, we're not saying this is the cure. We're not doctors, but this is how we live our life all the time. And if you follow Simply Seasonal, you know that these antivirals and these antibacterial foods and these immune boosting foods are things we talk about all the time. And we've been talking about this all year long. So if you've already been following us for the whole past year, like, you're in good hands and you should be in good shape. But we're going to go over like what we've been doing that has been helping us. And if you're not practicing these things already, now is definitely the time to hop on board with Simply Seasonal. And we're going to amp it up even more in the midst of this pandemic.
Totally. And we hear a lot with going around, like a lot of the advice that we're being given is pretty standard. It's like, wash your hands and don't stand within 6 feet of someone and stay in your house, in mandatory, isolation or whatever we're calling it. So that's really the only advice that we're giving or we're getting. And so we're really hoping that this is a chance where we can put the power back in your hands and really say, okay, these are also proactive things that you can do for your health, so that this is another step we can be taking to protect ourselves rather than just doing the hand washing and everything. Because Kara and I were talking, we're like, that's really a defensive way of living. We're on the defense all the time. And when you're on the defense all the time, you're living a lot of fear. You're living a life in fear because you're in fear of an attack. And Kara actually uses her tennis as kind of an example of that.
Right. So if you're playing tennis or really any sport, right, if you're always worried about the other team attacking you, you're playing on the defense, you're wondering what they're going to do. You're, just fearing what's ahead, the what ifs, which you don't even know if that's what's coming, right? Like, we're fearing things that we don't even know if that's what it is. So instead, play your own game, right? So it's when we play our own game and get more on the offense and we start to get more aggressive and attack, then we're ready. Anything that comes at us, we're like, whatever, we're just playing our own game. We've got this. And so today we're going to give you lots of tools to be proactive and to keep yourself on the offense.
Yeah, because I think that's just like a really huge one. And we've actually written a couple emails already when this started coming out of just, recognizing this fear and this fear factor that's kind of preached over and over on that like news loop that's going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that some people are just stuck watching that TV, and that fear just keeps bombarding us. And when that happens, fear is the number one way to lower your immune system right off the bat.
And
So yeah, suppress it. And so it's like, this, if we can recognize that and recognize that we're, in this fear state, and say, okay, what can we do to step into the offense and take ownership and take back our health and take control of it, that's going to give us more confidence and more peace of mind, which will allow us to relax and no longer be fearful and stressful. Because like we've said so many times on this show, is when you are are in that stress nervous system, that's your sympathetic nervous system. Your breath is high in your chest, you're really stressed. And at that point, your cortisol and adrenaline are flowing. Your immune system isn't able to work at its optimum because it's trying to save your life from whatever fear you're running away from. So a chronic state of that is not going to help you when it comes to a strong immune system. So if we can relax and feel confident and say, you know what, I'm doing everything in my power to keep myself and my family healthy, then we can relax and go into parasympathetic, deep belly breathe, and then we feel confident and have a stronger immune system.
Yes, keeping that calm peace of mind. So we want to talk about these lifestyle tips, and we also, for sure, our wheelhouse is the food and the herbs, which we really want to get into. Things we're really loading up on these days to really strengthen the immunity and give our body a real strong chance of fighting this thing. Because you guys, it's going to be around for a long time. It's not just going to disappear. And at some point, we're going to have to leave our homes, and it's not going to be out there. And these viruses and these, pneumonia is out there all the time, right? So it's like we need to be fighting it. And if you were following us in the fall, what we did was we strengthened our respiratory system.
And
what we need to work on right now, because this is where this virus is attacking.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because it's where the origin of this virus came from. It started in the fall. It started in about October, and it's just really fascinating because, again, if you were following us then, we were talking in the fall. That is the season, according to Chinese medicine, of the lungs and of the large intestine, which is our gut. So here we're looking at our immune system in our gut, and then our lung, our respiratory system. So that is of the energy of the fall, which is when this virus came about. So now that we're in springtime, we're going to be talking about what we can be doing at this time to help us out. But also, at the same time, looking back to the fall and say, okay, back then, what were we doing?
We were getting prepared for this, right?
Yeah,
Like we were preparing back in the fall for what's ahead. And that's just so powerful to know. And that's why it's even important to stay on our cycle, because what we're going to be doing in this spring is going to be so important to get us through the summer and next fall and next winter, right? It's this continuous cycle, and we're always using the foods of the season to help us through this cycle. And we don't wait for an emergency. We don't wait to get sick. We don't wait for disease. We get proactive, and we're always taking care of our health. We're always listening to the tiny little whispers that happen within our body and our individuality of like how your body reacts, knowing your limits and we all have our weaknesses, and you have to take that into account of how you live your life and how you feed yourself.
Absolutely. And another thing that we can't be waiting for is, any more guidance or any, medications or vaccines or anything against this. We can't wait for that. We literally can't. It doesn't exist. So this is where it's really important that we take this opportunity to actually go back to basics, go back to the earth. That's where this healing ultimately actually lies. It isn't in anything that's man-made. It's really in the earth and in nature. And so that's what we really want to get back to and use, and the beautiful thing about it is that, it's simple food and herbs, and it's not harming. So it can only be helping potentially. There's no bad side effects of it. So we may as well start doing this to see how much we can actually equip ourselves to be better off. So.
Yeah. And if I can tell you how many shopping carts I saw as I was stocking up for this to be home for a while, and I'm looking around the supermarket seeing people with Yoo-hoo and cheese doodles and Diet Coke and, tons of chips and Gatorade. And I'm going, how is this going to help you? It's going to hurt you through this pandemic. So we're going to talk about all the living, viable food, the living food that's going to to really help you. Well, that word viable came up because we don't want to be a viable host
Right.
for a virus. So we're going to make ourselves very inhospitable by bringing in all these antiviral living foods that are full of microbes that are actually become your defense system, these little bacteria that live in you in a good way, that are your first line of defense and don't even let the virus, into where it needs to go to settle and set up home.
Totally, totally. And that's the whole thing too, is that, viruses and flus are amongst us all of the time. But there, is something that makes it a little bit different this time around. It is different than the regular, seasonal cold and flu that comes about. So, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but it's just, something to take into account that the more that you strengthen your immune system, the more likely that you are not to contract it. And that's true of flu and viruses in general, right?
Mhm.
And then if you do have a weakened or suppressed immune system, it's even more important to bring it in. But like I like to say, don't think that because you might have a pre-existing condition or something that your body is weak. It's actually just working double time, right? So you just want to do your best at keeping it in that state, and help it out. You want to
Mhm.
support it. So this is even more important for those with pre-existing conditions.
And autoimmune conditions is something I live with, and actually what got me into doing this whole, natural health and holistic health, because I found that more susceptible to catching viruses and bacterias. And I live very much on the edge. And so I'm constantly trying to build my fortress. And as soon as I feel any kind of weakness or something trying to creep in, I have to cut it off. And I just know that's because that's my weakness. And if I let it go any farther, it's going to take advantage of me. So, I invite everybody to just, kind of feel that way right now. Like you need to protect yourself, right? And no one's going to do it except you.
Mhm. Totally. It's so true. And so when we're looking at also like the different foods and everything that are going to be helping with this. So in the fall, we had a lot of the onions and garlic and ginger. So those are really fantastic for the lungs and also for the gut. And we talk about this a lot too, especially when you're looking at something like ginger, right? It has like all these little fingers that come down. It kind of looks like, again, the ventricles of the lungs. It's fantastic for clearing the lungs. Ginger and garlic, all of these
Mhm.
things are also very pungent. So it has this clearing effect to the body. So it's going to help clear out anything that's stuck around that we don't want. So they're so great. And it's also going to be benefiting the gut. Also, all of those things are root vegetables. So it's the root of the body. It's going to be helping the root.
And also there's the mucilage, right? We talk about how onions and garlic have this mucilage, which helps coat the lungs or coat the gut and all that. So, and it has a very antiviral, antibacterial property to it. So, I mean, you really are bringing in literally, antibiotics, like nature's antibiotics, into your body to help you fight.
Absolutely. So if you want to learn more information about this, because we really go into it in the fall, it's our respiratory cold and flu episode. So go to simplyseasonal.com and check that out because we get really into it. And we also have a podcast all about it. So that'll be really helpful.
And really, if you're cooking at home, which hopefully everybody's cooking at home, here's one silver lining of what's going on here is we're seeing families cooking, kids cooking. Every recipe starts with onion and garlic, right? I mean, it's like the base of everything. So stock up on your onions, stock up on your garlic. That's a great way to start any recipe, and you're adding so much flavor and so much nutrition.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now we're going also from winter time. So we did fall, the winter, this is all about restoring and nourishing and building our health into the springtime. And spring is actually a lot more about cleansing and clearing. And it's this upward movement of energy. So, we went from this grounding and deeply nourishing to now this clearing and and lifting.
Mhm.
So we're
Can
kind
I
of,
just add in there real quickly? Because you went from fall to spring, but I just want to say over the winter, we really talked about immunity and all the gut building and building the microbiome and building up the immune system and knowing that we're going to be indoors more, we're going to be in closer confined conditions with each other, spreading a little bit more germs. Everyone's got the nose drip or whatever. So
yeah.
we talked about, we were talking about immunity all winter long, and we're building the gut to be this really, healthy place. So that's now, and then that brings us into the spring.
Yeah, and so now we're in the springtime. So if we did a really good job in the winter, we're gonna have this like really strong foundation. But at the same time, this foundation has to be able to move up as
Mm-hmm.
well. So if we aren't ready for that, this energy is moving up regardless, and either it's going to be an easy, simple process with no struggle, or it's going to be really difficult. And so this time of year happens to be another cold and flu season. We see cold and flu seasons happen in the shoulder seasons, the fall and the spring. And it's because it's this movement into the next season. And if, again, you're not prepared, it's going to be much more difficult. So usually we see this time of year instead of the respiratory, which is in the fall. But again, this virus started in the fall, so it makes sense that it's a respiratory virus. Usually in the spring, we see more of the head congestion, sinus, even migraines, allergies, things like that.
Everything's
So
moving up.
was moving up into the face. So that could still be happening for you right now, and that's just showing that we need to start adapting more to this new energy, which is springtime. So we're going to be bringing in more fresh, delicate herbs and vegetables, and we're going to change the way that we're cooking. We're going to be using like the blender and the juicer behind us, which I literally almost had to wipe dust off of them the other day when I was making them, because I was
I
like,
know, time to take
oh,
them
because
out.
I've been
Yeah.
using them almost all summer or all winter.
Yeah.
I've been cooking and using my oven so much. So we're shifting towards more of this cooling style of eating, which is more cleansing. And think of how good, if you did have a headache or anything like that, how good the cooling feels, right? So that feels really good. Whereas if you have something respiratory, something warm actually feels really good. So
Mhm.
also, this is a chance to see where you are, how you're feeling on a daily basis. One, because we're in the middle of this shift between winter and spring. Do you feel cold today? Or is it literally randomly snowing outside right now? Maybe we'll do more cooked food today. But then the next day, oh, is it like a really sunny, nice, hot day? Okay, maybe I'll do more smoothies. But then again, if you're also feeling sick, or like with this virus, right, we can bring in maybe more of the warm stuff, the cooked onion soup and things like that, that are gonna, warm ginger tea that's gonna warm the lungs and clear. So these are the ways that you can start to ask yourself, how do I feel today and what should I be bringing in?
Yeah. And also not just feeling physically, but feeling emotionally and mentally, because these foods have an energy, right? And so we can, even the same food, so like asparagus right now is coming up fresh for the spring. And so if you are feeling more of that winter energy of just feeling a little of anxiety because of what's going on in the world, or just because that's how you are, it might be good to keep it, more roasted and cooking the asparagus. Whereas enough, you're like, oh, I'm so hot, I'm so happy, like I just got to get into the salads and everything. Go ahead and start making your salads and have steamed asparagus and throw them into salads. So we can use these foods and be like, Megan was saying, we're on the shoulder of these seasons. So we have winter foods and we have spring foods, and how we prepare them can really change the energy of how we're bringing them into our body. I mean, I had a hot soba noodle bowl with bok choy and mushrooms last night, and then woke up this morning and had a smoothie bowl, so it's like, last night I wanted that warm comfort of, cozying at home, and this morning was just beautiful and hot, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for a smoothie.
Oh my gosh, we did the same thing. We actually had this warm German potato salad
Uh-huh.
that Danny made. It was this awesome recipe. And so, like, you boil the potatoes with the onion, and then you toss everything in, like, more of a mustardy kind of vinaigrette. It was so delicious, full of onions and oregano. And all these healing foods. And then this morning I had a smoothie as well when I went on a walk. So
Mhm.
exactly.
There we go.
Totally. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so using seasonal foods, and this is what we're doing with Simply Seasonal all the time, is really what we're doing. I mean, so this is something we do anyhow,
Hmm.
but we especially want to do this during this time. Really tap into what Mother Nature is giving us. As Megan says, we come from this earth, and from this earth we will heal, right? So
Oh, love it.
it's really important to use what Mother Nature is giving you right now, because that is exactly what your body needs to help keep up with what's happening in the whole world, right?
Exactly. It keeps you balanced. It's like, I mean, we say this as well quite often in our show, but it's like the waves, right? If you're standing rigid and these waves are coming, up and down, it's just like life, right? It's coming. If we try to stand super rigid, we don't change anything about what we're doing, and this new wave comes in, boom, we're going to fall right over. But if that wave comes in and we duck and dive underneath and we're really flexible and we move with the water, we're going to come up on the other side being like, oh, that that's we're on the other side now, and actually that was kind of fun. Like that wasn't a big deal, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the approach that we want to be taking in general.
Riding the wave. Yeah. Riding the wave.
Ride that wave, because we actually think that there's a lot of good on the other side. Even though that this seems to be so chaotic and like so much is happening, and unfortunately businesses are probably going to be going under, and the economy is probably going to take quite a dive. But at the same time, we're seeing this change of people coming together, coming back home, doing some more self-care, spending more time actually outside. I see more people outside now than I ever have before.
Mm-hmm.
But that's great, because we need sunshine. We need to appreciate Mother Earth where we are. And, a lot of this actually has been predicted for a very long time through things like astrology and the Mayan calendar. Was 2012 was this pivot point, and the Mayans said that it was going to be the end of the world. And when it happened, I remember a lot of people saying, oh, well, the Mayans weren't correct, the world didn't end. But that's
Mm-hmm.
not what they meant by that. They meant it was the end of the world and the consciousness as we know it, and it's shifting into the new. And
Yeah.
so it was the
And
end.
I've always heard that everything happens in 7-year cycles. So you're saying that 2012 is, so basically 2012 to 2019 was this shift. And if you think about it, in the last 7 years, how many like tsunamis, earthquakes, fires, hurricanes, floods. I mean, there is crazy stuff happening across the earth. And I think, Mother Nature is just like done. Like you guys have, gotten to your tipping point, and it's time for a correction, and just time to reset and a real awakening.
And it is an awakening, and that's exactly what's been predicted through all of these ancient calendars and astrology. And so we've been living in this era of Pisces, which is, things are a little bit more black and white. There's, right and wrong. There's, achieve or fail. It's this kind of dichotomy that's going on, and so there's rich, there's poor, there's, all of these things. So that's what we've been living in the last 2,600 years. And now is the beginning of a new 2,600-year cycle, which is the age of Aquarius. And the age of Aquarius is all about more of this: we are all one, and we are all equal and united, and there's no winners and no losers. We're all in this together, which is something that people are now saying with what's going on.
Yeah.
So we're
And
all
that's why Kiri is an Aquarius baby.
yeah, Kiri. I know. And I was so excited when I realized she was going to be Aquarius. I was like, oh, duh. Of course, she's here to change the world.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so I mean, there's so many theories out there and whatever, but like we're gonna stay in like what we can control. It's so fascinating to think about the astrology of that, and I love that, and it gives so much hope and like a different
yeah.
perspective, like the bigger picture, that really keeps like a positive spin, and like let's not focus on things we can't control, or things that are meaningless.
Exactly.
of things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It gives you hope.
And so, yeah. Okay. And then let's go into what makes this virus different than others, and then ways that we're going to be proactive because we know what we know about it.
Totally. So, yeah, so this virus is different than other viruses because it actually originates from animals. So, most of our common seasonal cold and flus that we get, the flu, is actually a human DNA. It's found in human DNA. So, it's really easy for our bodies to adapt to, much easier. But with this, any of the coronaviruses, they're all actually animal based. So it came from animal to human contact. So it's actually in animal RNA that comes into our RNA, and it doesn't match. And so it's a really difficult thing for our body to assimilate with. And so that's why these tend to be relatively deadly compared to this typical flu. Now, what ends up happening is that they start to mutate. So it goes, instead of you touching the animal, now the virus mutates and it can go person to person. So now person to person is spreading this animal virus. And again, each person now has to figure out, how is my immune system going to adapt to this foreign virus that my body doesn't recognize? And some might not succeed in that, and it's shutting off a lot of immune systems, right? Then take that another step further, and what happened is that within a 2-week span, this exponentially skyrocketed. And what they're also seeing is that that most likely was due to the fact that a lot of people had it and didn't show any symptoms, right? When they say asymptomatic, that means that people weren't showing symptoms of it. But with this spike, they go, well, it had to have been asymptomatic because only this many people were sick, but yet it spread all over this area where these people may not have gone, or whatever it is. So they saw statistically, okay, so, but then again, with that spread, it meant, and for the volume that it had spread, it now had mutated again to a degree that none of the other coronaviruses in the past, like H1N1 or SARS or MERS or anything like that, had ever done before. This one is this new thing that is now, and they're even seeing there could be a second phase to it. So it is morphing and like crazy. So that's the difference between the old and what we're going through now.
And we also know that it's contracted through the air, through your respiration. So we're really gonna, work on being proactive in that area, because that's where it's going to want to come in. And like I said, the goal is to become a really bad host, right? Like you want that virus to enter you and be like, this place sucks.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have to have a host to have a virus, like a
That's the
viable
survival
host.
of the virus, right? Like it's just trying to find a host so it can keep surviving, just like any other species or any other organism. It's just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So you have to show it that, not in this house. Yeah.
Exactly. And one other just mention, again, kind of more on that alternative view of what's going on. One of my favorite doctors, Dr. Christine Page, she's always said, even before this pandemic broke out, but she's always said that viruses are actually information that goes into the DNA, which it is. It changes the DNA, which it does, and it will always be with you. A virus will always be part of you once you have it.
Right.
So,
For example, like once you get mono, you always have mono, or the Epstein-Barr virus, or right. So
exactly. And when you get the flu, usually you don't get the flu again because it's part of you and you know how to fight it off, right? So it actually can strengthen your immune system. So that's what viruses are. So it's this new download of information, which is a download of new consciousness, right? Information, consciousness, ideas, right? And this is just now affecting everyone, right? It's not just this seasonal thing, this here and there. It's like, boom, this is now a new download for everybody. So again, it kind of goes along with all of this prediction of this new consciousness coming in. So again, it's not the nicest way it's happening, but it's a very strong and effective way that this change is happening in our world. So again, we just want to give you the tools and information so that you can take the power back and say, well, I'm really strengthening myself so that if I were to get this, potentially I could be getting through it much easier.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. So, do you want to talk about what's in your mug today?
Yeah, sure. I haven't even poured it yet.
This is a segment we do on our podcast. If you have joined us on our podcast, usually it's not in video, it's audio only. So you kind of can see what's going on here. We're usually in a studio with headphones on. Here we are working from home, WFH, right?
I had to when people were writing that, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we always have something in our mug, in our Simply Seasonal mugs. And today I'm sipping on hot lemon water because, as we're going to talk about, vitamin C is really important in being antiviral and keeping yourself healthy. And so I use some into hot water and put a little bit of honey in there as well.
Yum, I love it. Honey's antiviral. I love it. That's so great. I have in mine more medicinal herbs. I have like a whole herb shelf of all my different medicinal herbs. So here in my mug, I have licorice root, which is one of the best antivirals. It's really fantastic, as well as elderberry. And elderberry is also antiviral, and it helps. It's one of the best herbs at boosting the immune system. So you may have been seeing, especially I've seen a lot more lately, people are really embracing
elderberry syrup. Yeah.
Elderberry syrup, right? So these are ancient remedies that have been used for so long. Our bodies recognize it, right? We know how important that is. Our bodies recognize these herbs, and the herbs have a synergy to the body, and they can really help adapt and heal. And one of the things just to keep in mind when you are using herbs as medicine and in this medicinal way, consistency is really important. Frequency is really important. So it's something like, to have a cup of tea of whatever you're having, like 2 to maybe 3 times a day, and not just once a day if you're really trying to treat something, right? Or prevent something from happening. We also have olive leaf, which is antiviral as well. And, there's so many other amazing herbs like golden seal and Oregon grapefruit and all of these things that are really going to be, they're so multi-dimensional. They do so many other things as well. That's the beauty of food. You can't just say it does one thing. It literally almost can't just do one thing. It's so multifaceted, and that's the beauty of it. It's so balanced. And again, it balances so well with your own body. And then finally, just what we were talking about on social media, I put up a post the other day, which was this honey and garlic combination. So chopped up some garlic, put it in with some honey, and you take it like a Mary Poppins says, like a tablespoon of medicine or whatever every day.
It's a teaspoon of sugar. The medicine goes down.
Honey.
A teaspoon of honey, much healthier.
And garlic. And so this is also an ancient remedy that's really effective. So you can use it as more of a preventative, and you can also use it when you're in the midst of being sick. Take this as needed.
I love it. So, of course we are practicing the things that, that the CDC is recommending. We're washing our hands, and trying not to touch things. We're social distancing. But we also want to take these, proactive measures on things that can't hurt us. They can only help us. So why not add in these things to help us feel like we're doing something a little bit extra, and just, amping it up just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing, so there's all those antiviral herbs, medicinal herbs like Megan was talking about. We're also going to go into a bunch of culinary herbs. And one thing I love to go to is my fire cider. And so here's my jar. I make it in a giant jar and I sell it in little jars. But it's basically apple cider vinegar that's been soaked in every ancient remedy you can think of. So it's been soaking for a month in garlic, ginger, horseradish, rosemary, lemon peel, turmeric, garlic, you name it, it's in there. and it comes out like it's fire, comes out a little spicy. I'll just take a teaspoon of it. Sometimes I'll put it into hot water and breathe in all the vapors, and it feels really nice. And so basically this is something, not just now in this pandemic, but a lot of times in the winter, if I'm just feeling a little bit under the weather, or if I feel something coming on, any little whisper of anything, I'll just take a teaspoon of it and let it kind of like go through and wipe whatever it is out.
Totally, totally. And there's so many more foods and herbs too we're going to get into in depth, the antiviral herbs and how that really plays with the body. And so we'll also talk about the proactive steps that we can be taking to really make sure that we are boosting our immune system, protecting, having a healthy boundary around ourselves. I see things like the news and stuff with a place without boundaries, right? They just kind of come into your living room and boom,
Always looking for more.
they're
Yeah.
in there, and they're like, news alert, da, 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 gets really loud, flashing lights, like, a lot of the red color comes on TV, it's just like this alert, and that's going on. So if things like that are going on all the time, right, where our boundaries are down, and that's really going to have things bombard in. So understanding, your boundaries
Mm-hmm. And
also.
can I say that here's a difference with the news. So our advice is to really keep the news to, like, get your information, get off. Don't keep the news feed on 24/7, because you're going to freak yourself out. Because I mean, there's like this whole fear factor in it. They want you to keep watching their news channel. They're looking for the breaking news and all this stuff, right? But we're in this like shelter in place. No, shelter. I was reading that shelter in place is more like a hurricane, when like you literally cannot leave your house. Like, don't go outside, where right now we're just stay at home, right? Like, we can go to the grocery store, we can go for a walk in the sunshine, we can get out. So here's that difference, because really, like in a hurricane, when I'm stuck inside, I am watching the news a lot, because I want to make sure there's nothing like about to come at me. And it's so funny when they keep like the same tree that fell down like 15 times, like they're showing the same thing over and over and over, and they're like, look at this damage, and it's like one tree that fell down, and they make it into like this huge thing, and you're like, oh my god, they're just searching for something. But now we have the chance, we can get that, okay, the tree fell, now I can go outside and take a walk and get away from this.
And even
we'll check back in later, right?
totally. And then even like, when you're kind of pushing that aside, then also, when you're talking to your friends or your relatives or neighbors or people on the phone and stuff, another thing just to be wary of is a lot of the negative talk and negative conversations that go along. That is really powerful for the body. It's really effective. When we have negative thoughts, it immediately again lowers the immune system, suppresses the immune system. Thoughts and words change water. If you've ever seen the water example of speaking to water and seeing how it freezes into like either beautiful snowflakes when it's these positive words like beautiful or happy or anything, and in any language it'll happen. And then when a negative word is said, these random like deformed shapes take place, and it freezes. It doesn't look like a snowflake at all. It's crazy and erratic. And so when our bodies are 75 to 80% of water,
Yeah,
and
don't think that's not affecting you. Yeah.
totally, it's creating your blood, it's creating your organs and all of your cells, right? Everything is on that level of the water. That's so important. So again, if we keep these negative conversations going of, oh, this is awful or whatever's going on, it's really going to suppress your immune system and keep you in that energy when we can transfer it over. And that's why we say these positive things and go, look, actually there could be a lot of good that comes out of this and stuff like that. So just from a lifestyle perspective, that's a more of a proactive way to take control of your health.
And just when you were talking about that, it started stressing me out a little bit about all the particles being chaotic. And it made me just take this really big breath. And I was like, Okay, okay. And so that's just reminded me that breath work is super, super important. So whether you need to, get online and find a yoga teacher or yoga nidra or meditation, there's so much being offered online right now, because all these teachers are stuck at home, not able to go out and teach their classes. You can access teachers from all over the country, all over the world, giving, excellent instruction on this. But really it can be as simple as just taking a belly breath, basically just letting your tummy go, like not worrying about how flat it is or how popped out it is, and just really letting the belly expand and letting that go, and doing that 3 times is going to just flip your body into this parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest, where your body can relax and you're not on that, fight or flight, that defensive mode. And so taking these breaths, even if it's just, a few times a day, even if it's just once a day, like just find your time and make it part of your routine. And you'll find that your body, you can set yourself into relaxation very quickly.
Very quickly. It's amazing how quick that shift can happen. And if you don't know what nervous system you're in, just look and pay attention to your breath and see where it is. Where am I expanding the most? Where do I feel it? A lot of us will feel it here in our chest, and sometimes we might not feel it much at all, because some of us, like I'm pretty guilty of this, will kind of go without breathing for a while and kind of
Mhm.
hold your breath,
Holding
or
breath. Yeah.
really shallow breaths, like not a lot, right? And so this is that fight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system engaged is when we're up here. And
Mhm.
what's really interesting is that this virus going around is a respiratory
I
virus.
was just thinking that, and that one of the symptoms is shortness of breath. And so if you're scared, it's going to give you that feeling of shortness of breath and tight there. And so people are like, oh my God, I think I have it. I think I have it.
I have it. And then it's like tighter, tighter, tighter. And then you just like fall on the ground. So you're like, I had it.
Okay, we don't mean to make fun of it, but like it's
Yeah.
just interesting that,
Yeah.
really something, if you can let go of that and bring the breath down into the belly, really just calm yourself down, especially if you're feeling tightness in the chest and going, having thoughts like, oh my God, maybe I have it,
Mhm.
really do that work and bring the breath down.
Yeah, and it helps nourish and strengthen the lungs too, because if we're only breathing here, which we tend to do in our society all the time, we're not nourishing our lungs, and it's not being able to do its full job. So we really want to bring it all the way down, really nourish the
Mm.
lungs, fill them up. You can
Ooh,
even,
yeah.
like Kara was saying too, if you have like, hot tea, if you have the fire cider and you put it in there and you breathe the steam up, if you just have herbal teas, or which we're going to get into, thyme is one of the best herbs. It's antiviral for the lungs. So you can just put fresh thyme into some hot water and breathe that in. You're getting the vapors into the lungs, and do that deep belly breathing all the way down. So there you go. You're really deeply nourishing the lungs right there.
Make time for time.
Yeah. I think that's what we're all doing. We're making time for everything right
Time. And
now.
that's the other thing, right? Like we have time to like just go out in nature, take a walk, maybe not for nature, but we're supposed to stay home, but like get outside and appreciate, your backyard or your porch, just get some sunshine, practice gratitude, do some yoga. You always said you were going to start a practice. Now is a great time to start that practice. Yeah, I mean, now that you don't have to commute, it's a great time to do it.
Yeah, and also just thinking about nature and trees. So
Mhm.
trees also look like lungs, right? It has this expansion that comes out. These, expands up like a tree would. So, and the trees are also the lungs of the earth. That was unfortunately something that was happening this year, was the rainforest, right? Was burning as well. So trees are so powerful, so healing. It's part of the respiratory
Interesting.
system of the earth,
Yeah.
right? So now the earth is going under this respiratory pandemic, right? Between the rainforest, between this virus that's going on. So take this opportunity as well. If you can, get into trees. If you can't, if you have a tree in your backyard, like to stand with it, sit by it, breathe with it, meditate by it. I mean, again, it sounds like that. But I mean, that's exactly the type of energy. That's what's really going to be bringing in this restorativeness into the body.
You
So
can even do it barefoot and do some earthing.
earthing, yeah, I love it. I love it. Get all Buddha about it. You know,
Yes.
the tree.
Okay. Another nice thing to do is a bath. What a great way to just, soak the time away, put some essential oils. So, yeah, should we get into that?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah, baths are great for both like preventing and just having a great restorative lifestyle practice, and also really great for helping to treat anything that you're going through, right? If you have any sickness of any kind or a fever, it can really help. You hear it a lot, like sweat the fever out. So, your body creates a fever because it's trying to kill off whatever virus, pathogen, toxin that's in the body. It's using heat to help kill it off. But with a fever, that's your body using its own energy to create that heat. So if you have a fever, if you could go into a bathtub, into a hot bath, and sit there until maybe you are sweating, right? You're kind of hot for about like 20 minutes, as long as your fever is nothing above like 102 or so, I would do this 102 and below. You bring up the heat in your body via the bath water, which
Mhm.
isn't your energy. So now your body can use that extra energy to go fight off that virus or, infection or whatever's going on. And then it can, so it doesn't have to worry about heating itself up. So baths are really
Yeah.
effective.
Yeah, because remember, this virus doesn't like heat. So, when your body goes, puts itself into a high temperature, what it's doing is killing the virus, right?
Mhm.
And so, usually, a first thing someone does is try to control your fever and, take a Tylenol or take whatever to make the fever go down. Whereas, really, what we need to do is let our body do the work, right? And so, let that fever go as long as it's not at a dangerous point.
Yeah.
It's,
Mhm.
it's your body working. So, don't stop it from working.
Exactly. And just to think of that, it is really important to let the body, let the fever happen again, as long as you're, at that point, like 103 or below. If you're in the 104, that's when you really need to go get some help, or maybe take something that's going to bring the fever down, because that's a little too hot. Um, but when we do take a fever down, when it's in that healthier range, it actually allows whatever that virus or pathogen is to get into the body deeper.
Hmm.
And so it becomes harder, and the recovery time extends longer. And that's true of any condition, that in any sickness that happens. So
Right.
that's the downside of using stuff like that for a short-term fix. It actually creates a longer problem.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So we really want to get into some foods here, because we're talking about calming the nervous system so much and things to make our bodies calm, all these activities, but there's also foods we can use.
Mhm.
And just like we talked about earlier, even just cooking styles. So when we talk about soups and stews and roasts and porridges, so oatmeal, these are things that are really calming and, just kind of bring your energy down, and comfort food, basically.
Mhm.
And so, really, you can use this as a way to calm yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, so like porridges, so those tend to be made mostly with oats. You can make porridge with a lot of different things, but oats are always calming for the nervous system. They have been, like, that's again another old school remedy. You can put them in the bath if you have like irritations on your skin. I mean, they're so gentle and calming to the nervous system. But you can also make porridges out of other things. Like, I love making a buckwheat porridge. In Asia, they make a lot of congis, which is rice that's cooked in water till it's like really mushy. So it's like a high ratio of water with rice, and so it's more of a savory type of porridge. These are all so good because that element of cooking for a long period of time is that, oh, let's take our time, right? And so when
Mhm.
our food is taking the time, when we eat that, we're getting that benefit of that slower relaxation and just kind of like falling apart, right?
Yeah. And our body doesn't have to work hard to break it apart, because our cooking has done that for our cooking process has done it for us.
Mm-hmm.
So if you, even though, and these kind of cooking methods are definitely more winter style, but if you need this for you personally, then use it. Use this tool. So even though we're, like I said, even though we're moving into these springtime foods, we're kind of in between. Do what feels right to you. Next week we're going to be talking about cleansing, and it's kind of a crazy time to be in a cleanse, but maybe you're ready for it. So it's really all up to you, and we'll save that topic for next week. But you just have to do what feels right for yourself.
Totally. And if you are feeling anxious and fearful right now, and, or you have the kids home and you're like trying to work and have kids, and, they're not going back to school and things are just so different, and you're feeling anxious like you would, I mean, that's crazy. There's a lot of change going on.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's where you could use the wintertime foods, because again, they're going to be more grounding, those vegetables that are rooting in the ground, really firm, and we're cooking and roasting and stewing, and it's something you can curl up on the couch and just relax and feel good about. So that's the type of stuff you can use food for.
Mm-hmm. So take advantage of these end of winter foods while they're still here, because they are full of vitamin C, and they're full of all these immunity boosting foods. So things like citrus, I'm eating oranges, grapefruits, strawberries, so that's more spring. I'm like back and forth. I'm like, and plus like a cooked cabbage is really high in vitamin C, and even like fermented cabbage, so your fermented veggies, is really high vitamin C. So again, these are things that we did all winter long. Onions, garlic, ginger, and even bone broth. So that's really something that you can use in this time.
Yeah, they're all so great at just like building the body, restoring the body, which is what winter was all about. But again, use it now to really get yourself there. And if that cleanse sounds good to you, or you're feeling hot, or you're just feeling like, I just need more vegetables and volume, like I'm
Mhm.
eating here and there, but I need to like double or quadruple that.
Yeah, time
And
for more fiber and pushing
yeah,
things through.
and
And yeah.
that's the spring energy that you're feeling. And so, like, definitely join in with us next week when we're talking about cleansing and that spring energy, because we'll talk about what that looks like this year, which might be a little bit different than last year
Mhm.
because of what we're going through.
I love that it always changes. And that's really what Simply Seasonal is all about, like always changing, right? And
Mhm.
whether it's what's going on in your personal life, or what's going on in the world, or what's going on in the season, everything's always shifting and moving, which makes this so sustainable.
Yeah, totally.
So what comes to us in the spring is, well, we had fresh herbs in the winter too, but all these fresh herbs that are just, they're out of control in my garden right now. They're just bursting, and they're all antiviral. So we're
Mhm.
going to talk more about those in just a second. But we also have asparagus and fennel and berries, and leafy greens are coming like crazy. So we have more of the winter type leafy greens like the chard and the kale, but we're also now moving into more of those delicate lettuce type leaves that we tend to eat more raw and in salads.
And according to the doctrine of signatures, if you look at a piece of lettuce or kale or Swiss chard, you'll notice that when you turn it upside down, it's in the shape of a lung. And again, it has those little ventricles going through. So, and Kara says all the time, I love this. It like gives me goosebumps. She's like, it acts, the greens in the body act like the rainforest. It keeps and holds moisture in the body and regulates it, and has a really nice, like, it's almost like a humidifier for the body in a really good way.
Mhm. And a filter, just like you were saying, how the rainforest filters our air and the earth, that when we bring those greens into our body, it really helps filter. And it's the rainforest for our body, right?
Oh, I love it. It's so great.
Mhm.
So those are fantastic. And then with all of the herbs too, I mean, like we were talking about with thyme, so you have like oregano and sage and rosemary, and all of these are the hardier ones, which are more wintertime. They're very, very medicinal. I mean, I find them to have kind of more of a stronger medicinal potency than maybe more of the summertime ones. They are also very medicinal and very healing, but in a different way. So when we're going for this like deep level healing, we really go to the thyme. We really go to the oregano. These things are like powerhouses. They're dense, they're firm, they're like need to be cooked a lot of times. You can't really eat them raw like you could eat a piece of basil or a piece of parsley. These other ones need to be cooked. But thyme is antiviral and is a lung tonic. So it's fantastic when we put it in a tea, it becomes this lung tonic that's so healing to the lungs. Or you can breathe it in the vapor form or just cook with it a ton. And then you have oregano, which actually is more on the bacterial, will be an antibacterial. So it's more of an antibiotic. We refer to it a lot as nature's antibiotic. So is garlic. And oregano has this heat. Garlic has heat as well. So it's bringing the heat in the body with, all of these antiseptic kind of properties. So those are so great.
Yeah.
And then
And I've been I was going to say, I love that I've been able to cook with Megan so much over the last year because she's really taught me. I mean, I always cooked with fresh herbs, but not in the intensity and quantity that she showed me. And it just adds more flavor and adds more medicinal value. I was just like, put a little bit, and she's just like, when she gets her herbs, like, so, I mean, I grow them out in my garden, and it's just, I mean, they're in my landscape. So my lawn gets watered, and so do my herbs, right? It's like so easy. They just grow themselves, and they grow like weeds, and you just cut a big old chunk of them, and like, don't be stingy with them. So I find when I would buy them at the grocery store and it's like $3 for like a few stems, like that's where I would get kind of stingy with them, So when they're growing like bushy, you can really chop at them and really get them in there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we put them in tacos, we put them in soups, we put them in stews, we put them in sauces, like just throw the salad dressings, throw those herbs into everything you can.
Totally. And things like parsley and cilantro are more of the delicate style. And they also have more of like that stem that's still more delicate than like the stem of thyme. You can't really, it's like a stick. You don't really chew on that. Right. But the parsley and the cilantro, you can. So a lot of times I'll just take the bunch and just go boom.
Chop the whole thing. Yep. No picking off leaves.
Like, don't spend your time doing this. I did this in culinary school, and it's really tedious and annoying. Just chop, and you get the benefit of everything. So that's really great. And then also the parsley is more for the kidneys. So that was our wintertime energy. It's it's a diuretic. It helps flush through the kidney element, flush toxins through. And then you have the cilantro, which does similar things, but more on the heavy metal side, and actually goes through more of the liver. So it'll go through the liver. It helps take heavy metals and toxins, things like mercury, aluminum, all of that stuff away from us. And we actually know that viruses can survive longer periods of time when there's a higher level of metals in the body. So mercury and aluminum and all of these things actually cut a virus's half-life in half, or it doesn't allow it to have a half-life, which means at some point there's this dying off period and it exponentially dies off. When we have higher levels of aluminum, it can keep it there without having a half-life and starting to die off. So that's something.
And another filter and polar is seaweed, and we always talk about seaweed, and even like spirulina, and looking at the blue-green algae and all this. These are like living, breathing filters of the sea. These sea vegetables, they're so healthy. We use them. We talk about them all the time. So those of you who know us know what to do.
Yeah, totally. Cook with them as much as you can.
And if you don't, start watching. Yeah.
And they're actually in China seeing that spirulina and seaweeds are really effective with this specific virus. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But we know this because this is what it's good for in general. So of course we can apply it to a type of virus like this. So this is where a lot of what we talk about in the past is super applicable now, and this is why this information is so important for you to use year long as things change, but then also as random things in our world change, it'll still give you this stability of really good health.
Yeah. So I think we've really maybe we want to summarize. We've gone through a lot of things we want to talk about. Make sure you're getting outside, get your vitamin D. That's really important for your immunity as well. You can get it from food a little bit, but the best source is just getting out in the sunshine, especially now. Get out of the house.
Yep.
And also, okay, so everything's coming in, this way, this virus. So there's two things we talk about. There's the neti pot, where you can use this salt water solution to literally run it through the sinuses and sterilize and clean out there, so nothing builds up and bacteria build and things get sticky in there. So especially if you tend to get congested this time of year, if you feel any congestion, this is a really nice ancient remedy that people still use to this day. My husband lives by it. I mean, he does it every morning, every night when he's feeling any kind of congestion, and he just swears by it that it keeps him clear and clean.
Totally. It's so effective. And like Kara was saying, because this virus is airborne, right? How does it get into the body? Through the mouth, through breathing, and through the nose. And when you do this neti pot, you'll notice too, it sometimes feels like you've dived into the ocean and it's salt water and it's gone up your nose and it's kind of like, whoa. But then afterwards, like, even though that's an initial, like maybe a little bit of burning or a little bit of like, oh my gosh, you all of a sudden you blow your nose out, you're like, whew, okay. And then you feel really good. And you notice it's also with the ears, it's going in there and popping your ears open. It gets into the back of the throat. So it's helping to wash and clear out this whole area that's exposed to things that are in the air. So for this virus particularly, neti potting is really effective. So
it's a verb.
it's a verb. We're making it a verb. And so you just take warm water with some salt, and you want to put a good amount of salt in there so it tastes like, seawater. It's quite salty, and you can actually gargle with it as well, and then neti pot in the nose.
Another thing you can do, it's called nasya, and this is an Ayurvedic method where you take oil, and you can use coconut oil, which is very antibacterial, antiviral, and you can actually just rub it on the inside of your nostril. You can put it on your ears. This is something that, if you follow Dr. Douillard, he's the 3-season diet. He talks about Ayurveda, and this is something he says he does to his kids as they're walking out to school. He oils everybody's noses, and I'm like, that's brilliant, because as you're breathing in, it's like it has to go through this force field, and it adds this like layer of protection in this area where we're vulnerable of pulling in, viruses.
Totally. And if you use that coconut oil is antiviral. So, you're getting that too. So that's so great. And then we have essential oils too that we can bring in. So essential oils are really concentrated forms of all of these plant herbs, right? Whether it's like rosemary oil or lavender oil or oregano oil, or, even ylang ylang, or things like you haven't even heard of, before, or anything like that. But all of these herbs, they smell beautiful, right? Which is the benefit. But also, if you can diffuse them into the air, you'll be getting that in. And so many herbs are antiviral and antiseptic and doing all these amazing things. You can even simply, I learned this from a really good friend of mine, Meredith, where you just scatter some oil in the shower and you turn on the hot shower, and then it just vaporizes into the air. So while you're in there, like scrubbing up, you're getting this spa-like treatment of eucalyptus oil. I love to put in there to help with the lungs, or peppermint as well is really great for the lungs.
That's amazing. And we love, I get the doTERRA oils. So I have On Guard is like my go-to when I'm not feeling so good. I'll just rub a little, or I'll diffuse it into the air, or put it in my bath. And that's a blend of like wild orange and cinnamon and clove and all these wonderful, really nice smelling and healing herbs. And then there's also Breathe, which is kind of a mixture of peppermint, eucalyptus, that kind of deal. And we love that one too. So these are really, they feel really nice.
Yeah.
There's a lot of proven studies of how effective they are. It's pretty incredible. And I was always like a naysayer, but people would ask me, I'm like, oh, I guess I better see what the whole deal is with this. And when I started using essential oils, I was like, dang, like these, like I could swear they work. It's like
And
I just threw away my medicine cabinet.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
that's exactly it. It kind of turns into your new medicine cabinet. You're like,
yeah.
oh, I'm feeling this, and you look in there. You can even get some apps on your phone where you type in the oil and it'll tell you what it's good for, or you type in the symptom
What
and
you have, yeah,
what
yeah,
oils are good for. It's really
yeah.
helpful. So they're really awesome. And I was just thinking too, I was like, this is so nice because this type of like healing and lifestyle and living like this and treating the body like this, when it comes into contact with anything that makes us sick or anything like that, and we're bringing in these herbs, to either eat, right? We're putting time into this beautiful dish that we're making, or we're drinking this like delicious tea. I mean, this tastes so good. The licorice root is really sweet. It tastes so
Mhm.
nice. And then we have like essential oils all around us, and taking a bath. I mean, come on, like these
And
are
getting
so,
dinner going, cooking,
yeah.
yes. Like
And like, I mean, this
this
is
is
being
this is being proactive, and
Mhm.
like how beautiful is that? It's like we're
Yeah.
being like happy homemakers, but we're really being happy homemakers, like home, like our body.
Mhm. Yep, exactly. So just to think of like the opposite end of like, medicine in hospitals and the sterilization versus here where it's like you can be super effective, at doing so much of this stuff in the comfort of your own home with these beautiful things. It feels like you're going to the spa, and this is something you can do for your whole life, just on a continuum, just to keep yourself as vibrant and resilient as possible through anything that you're going through. So
Yeah, so we hope that all these tips and suggestions and ways of being proactive become part of your life, because these are things we're always implementing. Eating seasonally, getting all these, fresh produce into our bodies, always working on our immunity, always working on keeping ourselves as, thriving and healthy as possible.
yeah, we love it. And we do have a really big announcement as well that we want to bring up, which is we've been working on this, well, I guess you could say for a whole year as we've been putting everything together. But this winter, and it's coming to you soon. It's our cookbook. Look at it, how
Woohoo!
beautiful she is.
Woohoo! It's
Oh my,
all the recipes from our past year,
yes.
all in one place because you asked, and we are almost done compiling it. We're just making some last updates, and we'll get them out to you soon.
Yeah, it's going to print really soon, and so we'll keep you posted on that. But it's going to be really exciting, so you can have all the recipes at your fingertips, and it walks you through. You have recipes for the full year, so it's pretty amazing, and they're all healing in certain ways. So, yeah, so keep an eye out for that. But anyway, so if you don't already, make sure you go to simply-seasonal.com and sign up for email updates, because we keep you updated on things like our cookbook coming out. You get updates on when these new podcasts in this new format come out, and we'll be sending them to you, so that you don't miss a thing. Next week, remember, we're talking about cleansing, and more of this springtime and how that applies to you this year, compared to last year. So new information we're going to be talking about, and so much more. So go there, and then you can also follow us on social media, on Instagram and Facebook at Simply Seasonal Cooking Show.
Yeah, so hope to see you there, and let us know what you think. Let us know if you have questions, and let's keep the conversation going.
Awesome. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.